This is Upper Mustang. Today, we're visiting one of the most isolated villages in Nepal. What would it feel like to live in a world completely cut off from outside civilization? A place where no outsider was allowed to enter and no local was allowed to leave for centuries. Where life moved in complete isolation, hidden deep inside the Himalayas. Then, in 1992, something changed forever. Nepal finally opened a forgotten kingdom to the outside world for the very first time. A land that had remained untouched, unseen, and unexplored for hundreds of years. But what did the world discover when they finally stepped inside? High in the northern reaches of Nepal, past the last paved road, past everything the modern world considers normal, lies a place that most people have never heard of. This is Upper Mustang. And the moment you see it, you understand why it stayed hidden for so long. Upper Mustang sits in the northernmost part of Nepal's Mustang district, pressed right against the border of Tibet. To reach it, you travel through the deepest gorge on Earth, the Kali Gandaki, where walls of rock rise thousands of feet on either side, and the wind hits you like a wall. The altitude here is not a small detail. Low Manthang, the ancient capital of Upper Mustang, sits at over 12,500 feet above sea level. Some of the surrounding passes push past 14,000 feet. At this height, the air is thin, the cold is permanent, and the body takes days just to adjust. But what truly separates Upper Mustang from anything you have ever seen is the landscape itself. Most people imagine Nepal as green, jungle, waterfalls, rhododendron forests. Upper Mustang is none of that. The moment you cross into this region, the green disappears completely. What replaces it is something almost impossible to describe. A vast, open desert of orange and red cliffs, deep ravines, ancient, eroded canyons, and endless sky. It looks less like Nepal and more like the surface of Mars. There are no trees here, no rivers wide enough to matter, no signs of the outside world for as far as the eye can see. What you do see are mountains, always mountains, in every direction, closing in like the walls of a fortress that nature itself built thousands of years ago. The Annapurna and Dhaulagiri ranges block the monsoon rains from ever reaching here. That is why Upper Mustang is one of the driest places in all of Nepal, a rain-shadow desert sitting in the middle of the Himalayas. And because of that, because the rain never came, because the outside world never came, this place developed in complete and total isolation. A different world, on the same Earth. The story of Upper Mustang does not begin with tourists or trekkers. It begins in the 14th century with a warrior king, a forbidden land, and a kingdom that would survive for 700 years without the outside world ever knowing what was happening inside its walls. In 1380, a powerful ruler named Nepal unified the scattered villages of this high-altitude desert and founded the Kingdom of Lo. He chose a walled city as his capital, a city of mud and stone, built by hand at the edge of the known world. That city was Manthang. And from that moment, Manthang became one of the most isolated kingdoms in all of human history. The mountains around it were not just geography. They were walls, natural, unclimbable, impassable walls that kept invaders out and kept the Kingdom of Lo hidden from the rest of the world for centuries. But isolation was not the only reason outsiders stayed away. For hundreds of years, entering Upper Mustang without the king's permission was simply not allowed. The Kingdom of Lo had its own laws, its own ruler, its own army. It answered to no one. Not to the empires that rose around it, not to the kingdoms that fell nearby, not even, for a long time, to Nepal itself. This is why people called it the Forbidden Kingdom. Not forbidden like a locked door, forbidden like a different world, one that had decided very deliberately that it did not need what was outside. And for a long time, it didn't. Upper Mustang sat directly on the ancient salt trade route between Nepal and Tibet. For centuries, yak caravans carried salt from the Tibetan plateau down through Manthang and into the rest of Nepal. The Kingdom of Lo controlled this route, and that control gave it power, wealth, and independence. But when China took over Tibet in 1950, the trade routes died. The caravans stopped. The wealth dried up. And still, the kingdom remained closed. It wasn't until 1992 that Nepal finally opened Upper Mustang to the outside world. Even then, access was strictly limited. Expensive permits, government control, restricted zones. For the first time in 700 years, the world was allowed to look inside. What they found was a civilization that time had simply forgotten to change. In Manthang, the day does not begin with an alarm clock. It begins with the sound of monks chanting in the distance. Before the sun has even touched the tops of the cliffs. By the time the first light reaches the valley, the people of Manthang are already awake, already moving, already working. Because here, there is no time to waste. The first task of every morning is the animals. Yaks, goats, and horses need to be fed and moved to grazing land before the day gets underway. This is not a chore. This is survival. The animals are not pets. They are the entire economy of a household. Without them, a family has nothing. After the animals, the fields. Farming in Manthang is not like farming anywhere else on Earth. The growing season here is brutally short, only a few months between the last frost and the first snow. Children wake up and walk, long distances, every single day, to reach school. Because in a place this remote, education does not come to you, you go to it. And the elders, the grandmothers and grandfathers who have lived their entire lives within these ancient walls, sit in the morning sun, spinning wool, turning prayer wheels, watching the same mountains they have watched every single day of their lives. There is no rush here, no traffic, no notifications, no noise except wind and prayer and the sound of boots on stone. In the evening, families gather inside low-ceilinged rooms lit by butter lamps. Dinner is simple: sampa, dal, maybe some dried yak meat. Tea is always there. Butter tea, thick, salty, warm. The drink that has kept people alive in these mountains for 1,000 years. And then, darkness. Complete, total darkness. The kind that cities have forgotten exists. And in that darkness, Low Manthang sleeps, the same way it has slept for 700 years. Surviving in Low Manthang is not a lifestyle choice. It is a skill, passed down from generation to generation, refined over centuries. And if you lose it, you do not get a second chance. The centerpiece of survival here is the yak. There is no animal on Earth better designed for this environment. Yaks survive at altitudes that kill other livestock. They eat almost nothing. They carry incredible weight across impossible terrain. Their milk becomes butter. Their butter becomes fuel for lamps and food for families. Their wool becomes clothing. Their dried dung becomes the primary source of heat during winter. A family with yaks has warmth, food, transport, and trade. A family without yaks has almost nothing. But yaks alone are not enough, because in Upper Mustang, winter does not arrive gently. It arrives like a wall. By October, temperatures begin to drop. By November, the mountain passes are sealed with snow. The roads, already barely roads, become completely impassable. And from that moment, Low Manthang is on its own, fully, completely. Whatever food was stored before winter, that is all there is. No resupply, no delivery, no way in or out. This is why the summer months are not just for living, they are for preparing to survive. Families spend the warm months drying meat, storing grain, collecting fuel, and stockpiling every resource they will need for the months of isolation ahead. Nothing is wasted, ever. A culture that has lived through centuries of harsh winters does not throw anything away. Water is another battle. In winter, rivers freeze. Snow must be melted for drinking water. Every drop is managed with precision. Then there is the trade system, old as the kingdom itself. Families trade what they have for what they need. Barley for salt, wool for tools, labor for food. Money exists here, but the older systems of exchange, the ones that predate currency, still run quietly underneath everything. And through all of it, the cold, the isolation, the thin air, the frozen roads, these people do not complain, because this is not hardship to them. This is simply life. The same life their parents lived, and their grandparents before them, and every generation stretching back to the very founding of this kingdom. Survival here is not a struggle. It is an identity. Walk through Low Manthang and you will notice something immediately. Every single wall has a purpose. Every color means something. Every stone was placed by someone who understood that in a place this harsh, beauty is not a luxury. It is a necessity. The houses of Low Manthang are built from mud and stone, the same materials that have been used here for 700 years. Thick walls that keep the brutal cold outside, flat rooftops that double as working space in summer for drying grain, storing fuel, watching the mountains. Small windows that let in just enough light without letting in the wind. From the outside, these homes look like they grew from the earth itself, because in a way, they did. But step inside a monastery and everything changes. Manthang has 4 major monasteries within its ancient walls. The oldest date back to the 15th century. Inside, the walls are covered floor to ceiling in tanka paintings. Butter lamps burn day and night. The smell of juniper incense drifts through every corridor. Monks in deep red robes move through these spaces with a quietness that feels almost physical, like the silence itself has weight here. Buddhism is not just the religion of Manthang, it is the architecture, it is the calendar, it is the reason the TG festival happens every year. 3 days of masked dances, drum beats, and ancient ritual that fills the central square of the walled city with color and sound and prayer. Prayer flags stretch between every rooftop. White, blue, red, green, yellow. Each color representing an element. Each flag carrying a prayer that the wind carries across the mountains every time it moves. And the wind here always moves. The monks who live in these monasteries are not separate from the community. They are its heartbeat. They perform rituals for births, deaths, harvests, illnesses, and journeys. They are teachers, healers, and historians all at once. In a place with no hospital, no library, and no government office, the monastery is all of those things combined. This is a culture that did not survive 700 years by accident. It survived because every single part of it, every prayer, every ritual, every painted wall, was designed to hold a community together in the most unforgiving place on earth. Here is the question that stays with you long after you leave Manthang. Not about the caves, not about the history, not about the survival. This one. How are these people, with no hospitals, no internet, no shopping malls, no career opportunities, no modern comfort of any kind, genuinely, visibly, undeniably happy? Because they are. Anyone who has spent time in Manthang will tell you the same thing. There is a lightness to the people here that is almost impossible to explain to someone who has never seen it. Children laugh without reason. Elders sit in the sun with the kind of peace that most people in the modern world spend their entire lives chasing and never find. So what do they know that we don't? The first answer is community. In Manthang, no one is alone, ever. When a family's harvest fails, the community feeds them. When someone gets sick, the neighbors come. When a house needs repair, everyone shows up. There is no such thing as a stranger inside these walls. Every person knows every other person, their history, their family, their struggles. In the modern world, you can live next to someone for 10 years and never learn their name. Here, that is simply not possible. The second answer is purpose. Every single person in Manthang wakes up knowing exactly what they need to do that day. Maintain the monastery. The work is hard, but it is never meaningless. Every task connects directly to survival, to family, to community. In the modern world, millions of people go to work every day doing things they cannot explain to their own children. Here, the purpose is written into the land itself. And the third answer, perhaps the most important one, is acceptance. The people of Manthang do not spend their lives wanting what they do not have. They do not scroll through images of other lives and feel inadequate. They do not measure themselves against strangers on a screen. They measure themselves against the mountains. And the mountains, as it turns out, demand only one thing: that you show up every day, fully, without complaint. The modern world has given us everything except that. And Manthang, this forgotten, frozen, forbidden place at the edge of the world, has had it all along.